All right. Well, I think we have pretty much everybody who has been doing the crochet along. Let me know if you can hear me properly. I'm slightly different on my setup. So we're back in my living room. Everything finally arrived. I have my top. So that was a little bit of an adventure because I feel like FedEx delayed my checked baggage coming. Well, I mean, it should have been checked from the beginning, but I have everything now, so that's exciting. Great. Hi, Sabrina. Awesome. And also, Kithkin, I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's funny. I was trying to figure out last week why you had a different symbol by your name. So thank you for joining my membership. It just totally went over my head, and YouTube did not send me a notification that I had a new member. So that's unfortunate. And I don't know how to fix that. Hey, we have a special guest. Hi, Olga. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting you. Because you're busy too. And see who else. All right. So I think first things out of the way, if anyone is just starting this crochet along, or maybe you're just popping in because you see something live and you're like, what is a crochet along? This is the Waterlily top by Olga Poltava, who is so kind to join us in the comments today. So, and I wanted to ask her something offline and I totally forgot yesterday. So sorry about that. Anyway, so this is the top that everybody is crocheting in their own yarn. I think one other person in the crochet along might also be using the Alize Cotton Gold. I know I was a little hard on the yarn as I was working with it, but how it's wearing is far, above and beyond making up for it. So I think at some point I will probably, not that I need to buy more yarn, but I would actually get the Alize Cotton Gold again. I definitely don't need to buy more yarn. Every time I go in my yarn room, which is more about the mess than anything, because I was trying to find something for filming this week's video, and that was just a nightmare. That took way too long. Oh, yay. Your son is there too. Awesome. Yeah, I know. That can be a lot. But anyway, so if anyone is just starting out, just swatched, crochet along, we're just kind of making the same thing in your own interpretation, your own yarn. So this was I think it was on the heavier sport weight side. If you kind of look at how the yardage and the skein weight goes. And so I know that was one question that came up in the Facebook group of what if I go up to a DK or down to a true sport? And I think generally speaking, I've had pretty good success going up one or down on a yarn weight before, and then just adjusting. Like I might, if I go up in the yarn and I can't get gauge, or I don't want it to get that tight, then I would go down a size. And then also you can do some yarn math, because as much as I wanted to make more notes to myself, I did not erase my yarn math from last week. So if you need any help with the math, this I think should be helpful. Let me turn that one off. So feel free to screenshot this. Like I said last week, I don't invent math. I'm just showing you kind of how to use it in a way that us yarn people actually care about. And so if your gauge is tighter, this is the kind of math that you're going to want to do. And if your gauge is tighter, you'll want to go up a size or two. And that's going to be your gut check of if you did the math correctly or not. And then if your gauge is larger, you'll get to feel really good about yourself and go down a size or two. So feel free to use that if needed. It took everything in me not to erase that and start making notes to myself, which then just goes on my bathroom mirror because I need stuff in front of my face. So That's who I am as a person. So that is a priority right now, is if anyone has any questions or any yeah, love is yeah, I would agree with that. Love is not erasing your yarn math for us. Uh-huh. And the ridiculous part is I do have other whiteboards. One of them I left at work because I didn't know if I wanted the chalkboard or the whiteboard at work. And so now the whiteboard has been sitting there for 2 years and I just need to bring it home at some point because it's just doing nothing except staying in the wrapper still. And then I have one of those other ones where it's like the week calendar, and then I don't actually use it to plan out the week, so I don't tend to use that one anymore. Um, so anyway, this week is honestly largely just going to be us hanging out because I'm getting the sense, at least from the feedback, that everyone's kind of in cruise mode and that there's not a whole lot of questions, which, you know, let's toot Olga's horn. That means the pattern was very well written. And also, as a double checker of the pattern, one of the two double checkers, we've also done our jobs, that nothing is that incredibly terrible or unclear. So, hopefully, unless anyone wants to see anything, I did a better job planning a second possible camera angle last week because I was at the table and this is way more comfortable. So than sitting on wooden dining room chairs, to be honest. That was not something I thought through when I purchased the set. I just liked it and went, hey, let me do this. And it's fine. Who eats at their dining room table anymore anyway? It's like my mail collection area. I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time. The only people that actually eat at my dining room table are my niece and my nephew, and that's because, my brother and my sister-in-law kind of make them so they don't make a mess here in the living room, and that's fine. That's, I'm not going to override their parenting, and that's probably a wise choice, even though one is a teen and one is going to be a teen very shortly, and I don't know what has happened with a large chunk of my life. Like, I feel like I've lived a lot of life, but I also don't know where all those years went, so anyway, so today we are just kind of hanging out. Um, were there any other questions on that? Olga, I think you said you were using fingering weight yarn in the email. My memory is terrible, but I think it looked like a little bit fuzzier of one, and I'm really excited to see that version because that did cross my mind to do a nice fluffy one, but I can apparently only crochet and knit and, work a full-time job so fast. So that's kind of where I'm at in my life. And I've noticed, particularly in the last year or so, I don't know if it's necessarily because I started the channel. I don't think so. I think just in general, I have slowed down my crochet and my knitting process immensely because number one, if I rush, I'm going to make more mistakes. Number two, like, I felt like I was rushing for my own internal, like I was adding more stress to rush to get something done rather than just enjoying it. And I will say in the past, I was definitely a product crafter, meaning I wanted that end result more than I wanted to do the actual craft. And I'm feeling that shift as I'm trying to slow my life down a little bit, that I don't need to speed crochet and I don't need to speed knit all of the things just because. So that's kind of where I'm at in that. I don't think, oh, there was one other question that came up and it was similar to the yarn weight substitution, and this was the DK yarn that was asked about, is the True Boo, which I think I didn't spend a ton of time trying to get a gauge on this particular swatch. I just kind of wanted to see how this would drape. I think True Boo is a beautiful drape. Me personally, and my crochet motions tends to make this splitty, though I will say by the, halfway to later in the swatch, I noticed I was adjusting for it better. And so I would still highly recommend True Boot. And again, the splittiness could be 100% me. So whoever had it in their stash, I can't wait to see it. And I'm also really curious what color you're making. Fine category. Yeah, I think that's what category 1 is, generally fingering-ish weight. I think the Angora is going to be really cool to see how that's. Yay, long sleeves. Okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are you planning on adding that as an option to the pattern? Because I think there's at least 1 or 2 other people that would love to see that. And um, if you do, I'm going to encourage you to also raise the price of the pattern. And so then, you're really going to want to buy the pattern now to lock in your price. Um, let's see, I'm definitely a process gal, though I do have a whole, I know. Have you seen my whole whips video? And actually, in the video I filmed this morning about kind of where things are at, I have to accept that the whips that I decided I'm not ripping out, I'm not going to finish them by the end of this year. That is the biggest thing I had to accept, I think, in the last couple of weeks or so, unfortunately. And yeah. And I think it was Yarn Doc that wanted to do long sleeves. And also, it's really cool that you're in Croatia right now. Yarn Doc, is your first name Anne? Because I think I've figured out who you are, but like, I'm not the best at stuff like that. And so if someone wants to share their like real first name and it takes me a few times to, internalize them, it is nothing personal. There's just a glitch in my brain. I'm the person where it's like, I don't know, I can't figure out like musicians and their songs and actors in their movies, like those things don't internalize very well to me. One of the things that I've been doing lately is watching the latest season of Survivor. I don't know how I got sucked back into Survivor. Actually, I do know how I got sucked back into Survivor, but I did a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple of years ago. And often, especially early on in the season, I have to rewatch those first couple of episodes a few times. Number one, to catch all of like everything going on. And more importantly, so I remember people's names, and I still am probably like 50% on the names of whoever's on Survivor right now. Ellen, I am sorry. Oh, you are Anne. Okay. That makes sense. You're Anne. Well, welcome, Anne. And you are Ellen. And I did try to stalk your YouTube channel to see if I could figure out. I'm like, just what is her name? I'm like, I feel like I know it, and I just wasn't, there. Oh gosh, no, like feel free to just, follow along. And also, like, that's really important to have dinner with your sons. So, anyway, so I guess that would be one question is and it's okay if you're just wanting to crochet along and not really do the chat, that is totally fine. There are no rules other than, I don't know, don't be jerks. So that's about it. Those are my rules. Don't be a jerk. So anyway, but what is everyone watching? Obviously Survivor, I just mentioned. I started watching the blind auditions of The Voice actually when I was out of town, just because it was on and I was trying not to go to bed horrendously early. And now I'm just going to kind of see. I don't know if I'm fully invested in this season yet or not. And then lately, the 2 YouTube channels that I've recently discovered that I'm finding myself going back to, actually there's 3. One is Study Knits, and she is in her residency right now, which is really cool and amazing that she's managing a residency and a YouTube channel at any amount of frequency, because that's crazy, but also awesome. And then Or maybe it's just like I forgot what it was like to be in my 20s and be able to do all the things. That's probably more accurate. And then I've been watching Lovely Day Knits a lot. She is out of Australia. So she's been really fun to watch her channel. She has a very interesting and fun editing style, to be honest. So I would check her out. Sabrina, I've been watching you, obviously. Also, if you have a chance, go check out Sabrina's channel and check out the yarn that she's using because it's a multicolored variegated yarn and it is gorgeous. I wish I would have thought of that, but I didn't. So, and it's turning out very, very pretty. So excited to see that. And then the one I discovered this weekend is Knit Cheek, all one word. Like, here, Knit Cheek. So Naruto. Is Naruto anime or something in that? 'Cause I feel like I've heard that reference a few times. So, um, oh, interesting. You know what? I go down so many YouTube rabbit holes of like deep dives of the most random things. And then occasionally I'll like stick with the channel because I happen to like the person. Like there's one RVing channel I watch, even though I have no interest in RVing myself at all at any point in my life. But somehow they were suggested to me and I'm like, well, this couple is really fun and they just have this like fun poppy, like sitcom-y way of doing stuff. And then deep dives, I mean, I've started watching a mortician for some reason. Like I went down that rabbit hole. Like I really need to do that and, ruin my sleep. I don't know. Um, yeah, there's been a lot of really good deep dives lately, I think. And then I just mess up my own algorithm. So, and then, yep, Biz Barclay. I feel like I've seen at least one of her videos, but it doesn't always come up, maybe. It sounds familiar, or maybe I have something saved for later because, I want to watch all of the things, but this goes back to I only have so many hours in a day and in a week to get to everything. So, you know. And then, ooh, well, hello. Thanks for joining. You are not too late. We are just about settling in. Most of us are just kind of cruising along with our projects at this point. By all means, if anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns about the pattern, I'll make sure you get some priority on your questions, but I'm just happy to see some others joining. So anyway, my video that's going to be coming out sometime this week. I have a lofty goal of Wednesday. I don't think it's going to happen because I also forgot that I had a couple of commitments this week, but hopefully Wednesday is everything I knit or crocheted this summer, which spoiler alert is not a whole lot. And then my fall yarn, well, yeah, pretty much fall yarn plans because I mean, I knit and crochet and, you know, I tend to call it one or the other, and then it's fine. You kind of know what I mean at this point. But so that is, I tried to pare down my fall yarn projects and plans, but I still think it's probably a lot. So I'm curious to know what other fall projects you are working on. Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I've gotten I got this comment once and I'm holding it as like I might respond to like funny or interesting comments at some point in the future where it's like you talk a lot and it's like, well, okay, if you want to go like listen to music, don't let me stand in your way. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, Olga, the other thing I've started doing because I do recognize like we should start winding down our screen time in the evening before bed is it's not unusual now for me for like the last half hour to hour of the day to just turn everything off and just crochet or knit in silence. And then a lot of times I read before bed. So, you know, that's something I'm trying to get better at is to not necessarily have a whole lot of stuff coming at me, especially because I was coming off of a few weeks of feeling like hyper overstimulated. Like Friday I was rough by the time I got home on Friday. Um so yes, there was a lot of quiet time this weekend. Yeah. There is nothing wrong with that. So I mean for me, I guess I tend to gravitate more towards the videos or the creators that are more chatty, vloggy in their videos, but I still watch a lot of either just totally not yarn related stuff, or I will sometimes just put on music or just turn everything off entirely. You know what, Sabrina? Here's the thing. Um, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was talking to someone about my year-long experiment project, and there's a very specific reason why it's a whole year-long endeavor. And I was kind of bouncing back and forth of like, well, what if I do this or what if I do that? And they're like, okay, but your style could totally change on how you film and edit in a whole year. And so I had to kind of keep that in mind. And it also reminded me that there's more than one video that I have filmed that have never been released. And largely it's because I don't know if it's like I bit off more than I could chew, but it was like I started getting to a certain point in the editing process and I'm thinking, if I'm even kind of questioning if this is boring, I don't know what to do with this. And I finally figured out at least one of them how to make it a little bit more interesting. And so I have over 2 hours of footage that's probably going to get kind of like cut down to my usual. It's going to be more than 50% of it is going to get cut down because it was a lot. Like, I understood my vision at the time, but now that I have more of an idea of and sometimes it's more of the idea of what I wanted that video to be, and sometimes it's more just like, I don't know. I know I wanna do this thing. Um, yeah. I mean, everyone has their own style. Some of the, crafters out there that are more vloggy will do music interludes or they're out shopping with and they put like background music and stuff on and that's fine. I have my moods too of what I want, so sometimes I'm okay with that and sometimes I'm like, I want to hear someone talk for the background noise, and maybe it's because I live alone. That could be a me thing. That's actually probably a good idea, is when you need to focus on stuff. I would agree with that. Now I will say like stuff that I need to focus on I probably will put on reruns, which I don't know. I I used to try to listen to audiobooks in the car, and I learned that I can't do the books that have a storyline because if I take my attention off of the book to pay attention to what's going on the road or whatever, or I zone out for a second, which is terrible, but we all do it. And then I have to like, wait, where did I was spending more time like rewinding it. So now in the car, it's more like developmental, like self-development kinds of books, like Atomic Habits, Mel Robbins, her Let Them theory book. I listen to that in the car a lot. I mean, that kind of genre, I guess, because even if I miss one or two little bits here and there, I'm still going to get the overall tone of that chapter. You learn by doing. If crochet and knitting has taught me anything, it's you just learn by doing and posting awful videos and going, okay, well, how do I make this better? And making stuff work. A lot of the reason why I tend to pull back music in the background now of my videos, it's one of two reasons. Either it's like, I know sometimes it bothers my ADHD autistic side. So, like, sometimes I personally can't handle it. And I'm thinking, well, if I can't handle it, other people might not be able to like enjoy it that way, especially because there is a fine art of doing background music well so that it's not drowning out or competing with your voice. And it's frustrating because I can think I have it in my editing. And then when it goes and renders on YouTube, I feel like somehow the layers of the audio differ and it just is really frustrating. Or it differs in the sense of like, I can't even get any sense that there was any background music. So that was an incredible waste of my time. Um, ooh, comments are really rolling in fast. Hang on. Yeah. And it's like, lives are hard. And it's not that I'm either extremely articulate or I'm extremely not. So the power of editing sometimes does wonders. Um, yeah, exactly. Exactly, Ellen. Like it's just you'll just kind of figure it out or you'll try new things. Don't be afraid to try new things. That is fair enough. And truthfully, like there's even I think there's a couple days this week I just turned off everything in the car because I just wanted quiet on the way home. Yeah, exactly. And you don't need perfect videos. There are plenty of channels that are very like not edited or produced that do just fine. I would agree with that. I think it took me longer because I tried to do everything on my phone, and then eventually I'm like, "I just need to break down and get a computer," and then I ended up doing the camera so, like, I could transfer files and not have to struggle trying to edit on a tiny little screen and also suck up all of my memory on my phone. That was a huge, huge thing. Yeah. Background music, like, it's either I don't hardly notice it at all because it's done very well and at just the right level. But if it starts to compete with what they're saying and it's more than their little like splashy music at the front or at the end, I have to leave. So I would rather omit music and not have to play that game. And sometimes it just depends on the type of video. My crochet and chats, I tend not to do music because, like if I'm just hanging out chatting with a friend, we don't necessarily put on music. We're yapping with each other. That is very interesting. Good to know. Very good to know. And that was the other thing I realized is that there are a lot of crochet and knit channels that I watch that I didn't even realize they don't have music. So why am I pressuring myself? So like I don't even subscribe to like Epidemic Sound anymore. I don't stress out about it. Um None of that. Yeah, I would leave it out if you're not sure. It is an incredibly fine art. Um, yeah, and start with what you have. And if you it's kind of like don't put the cart before the horse. And the analogy I'm going to use is a lot of times, like, if you want to encourage yourself to work out, it's so easy to get caught up into, I'm going to buy all new workout clothes and gear and shoes. And no, you reward yourself after you've been consistent for like a month or something. And then it's far more enticing that way, in my opinion. So I definitely don't feel like you need to do an investment ahead of time. And I did get pretty efficient at doing it on my phone. And then that particular app that I was using for editing, it wasn't like one of the super popular ones like CapCut or any of those. Um, it really started getting glitchy and just like I would lose hours and hours and hours of work. And I just was like, you know what? I'm not a fan of putting stuff on credit or afterpay, but I did it. I got through it, paid everything off early, and we're here. So, um, yeah, and I think it depends on the type of video that you're doing too. So, someone that I think that does music very well is Elise Rose Crochet. Like she's figured out just the right levels that I really only notice it because I'm trying to pay attention to those details and see what other people are doing, but it does add a little something to the feeling and the vibe of what she's doing. Um, well, hello again from Kenya. Thanks for joining us. I would love to know what time it is over there because is it super early in the morning, late? I don't know. My brain just completely forgot how to do any kind of time zone math. It's probably late over there in the evening. Truthfully, I actually considered this. It depends on what you're going for. If I do decide to do crochet tutorials or knitting tutorials, personally, I do not plan on doing anything distracting with it at all because I know there is a large group of people who want to learn that find all of that stuff distracting. Um, and you don't necessarily have to cater to neurodivergence, do you? I'm sure there are people that would super enjoy music in the background, and that's part of the experiment. The other thing, realistically, you could do if you're wanting to find out which one does better, post both of them at the same time. Do and just put in the title of one of them that, there's no music or anything in the background. Like maybe it's like a low sensory, I forget what the stores call it in the morning. Yeah, and it's easy to get sucked into all the like, use this, use that. And I honestly, it was one of those things that once I saw like the camera that someone was using, I knew that was the one instead of trying to go, do I do the Sony? Do I do the Nikon? Do I do like you can stress yourself out over it. This one is super easy. And easy wins, especially when you're learning this whole new thing. We all love Elise, I think. 8:37. Okay, so not as late as I thought. Okay. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think, again, I would just take down the music like at least 20, 30 decibels, depending on how your software is in editing. Like, take it down a lot so it's there, but it's not overwhelming. Yeah, I would agree with that too, because I saw a reel recently where it's like, oh, crochet and knit tutorials be like, okay, so you're gonna yarn over, and then like, they clearly super sped up the clip that they were taking, and it's like, I can so relate to that. Yeah, how many times do we have to rewind it if we can't find someone else with that same tutorial? 4:30 Monday morning. Oh, well, I'm sorry you can't sleep, and I'm glad you're here. And so now I guess I feel a little bit better that I put, like, why am I putting Australian times in my conversion for the lives? But you never know. Um, I do have a chunk of Australian audience. And so, you just never know what people's schedules are. I worked night shifts far too long in my life. So, there's also that. I think that's also kind of a good point, is just fade it in and fade out the music when you're not talking. So that way, this is kind of the whole point, especially with a crochet along or any kind of knit along, make along, is that we're not trying to hit a particular checkpoint. And there's a good chance I'm not even going to finish my second version by the end of this crochet along, because I thought I was going to get far more progress done on this than I actually did, because I was trying to do the sleeve of a sweater to get that off my mind, and kept making a gazillion mistakes, and I'm still not done with it. So this is really sort of the point, is just to have that community aspect of like, we're just kind of all making this for fun together. And if you're not making it and you're just hanging out, that's also super fun. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I actually, it's funny because the Friday coming in, going to work, first of all, I do have a dash and rear cam in my vehicle. And I thought to myself, I don't know how many times, and I took like I usually take back roads to work. I don't mess around with the highway anymore. I will spend 7 more minutes on the road to usually have a more chill and relaxed drive in and out of work. Except Friday, I wasn't even halfway to work, and I'm like, is there a full moon? There has to be a full moon, and I've heard that that makes a difference too. Well, hello from Texas Panhandle. Well, and that's okay too. Do you know how many crochet and knit videos I actually watch when I'm not knitting and crocheting? And then inevitably they're like, "Oh, what are you working on?" And I have to be the person in the comments that's like, "Oh, I was just, doing dishes, but thanks for keeping me company." Trying to remember, why can't I picture the Panhandle? That's closer to the western side of Texas, or am I backwards? Um, I would agree 100% with, is the internet filled with all sorts of pitfalls? Yes, but if you focus on the good things, I've also learned that you can train your own algorithms, and you don't have to death or doom scroll on Facebook or whatever. You can train it to, if you keep Xing out of the stuff you don't want to see anymore, um, and you don't want to keep getting traumatized by the daily news that happens, and you just say, "Hey, I," you just keep spending more and more time on like knitting and crochet or wholesome memes, I think is like a whole page or something. Stuff like that, you can train your own algorithm, and I will spend time to do that because I it's not worth it. That is the power of doing music very well, because she does a very great job of, like, encapsulating the moment and the feeling of what's going on without it being overpowering, and it's truly an art. So and if I had more patience, or if I learn from my mistakes, I would let the video render on YouTube, watch it back before I, fully publish it, but I don't learn from my mistakes very well sometimes. Okay. It used to be Route 66. I've never taken that actually. I mean, really my only experience was flying into Houston, then to Midland, and then driving out to Pecos, and then West Toya was where we were actually working because you can't stay in West Toya, you have to drive there. So, fun fact, there is a west of the Pecos museum that we found, and one of my bosses was like, "We didn't see that when we were there for 2 weeks." Um, that was a previous job. I would agree. Control your algorithms. Amarillo. This is so fun. Like learning where people are from. I've really only been around Northeast Ohio for the most part. Ironically, completely unplanned. I currently live in the same neighborhood with almost the exact same floor plan house as the first house that I grew up with until I was like 4 or 5. Not planned at all. It was just happened to be what I was looking for in a neighborhood at the right price at the time, and thank goodness I got in when I did, because I cannot imagine paying mortgage and rent prices these days, and it is eye-watering, like, listening to my friends if they're trying to move or deal with rising, like, rents or whatever. Oh my gosh. Ugh. So, Northwest Ohio. I don't make it over to that side of the state as much as I always say I'm going to. And if you're not like, a big Cedar Point person, which I'm not, speaking of sensory overload, that I seriously have to be in the mood to be like, yeah, I'm going to come to Cedar Point with anyone. So that's happened about 3 times in my life. Um, but I know also Put Bay, the islands up in Lake Erie I haven't been there in a while either. There's a lot of really cool stuff in Ohio. I think Ohio is extremely underrated, but maybe I'm partial, but we get crapped on a lot, especially with all the Midwest themes and like sort of there's nothing here, but in a way that's not necessarily a bad thing because, I don't have alligators to deal with outside my door. Yeah. Oh, well, we have cattle here too. That's the only like drawback to driving to work the way that I do because I shoot up through Amish country and then cut across into the Cleveland area. Oh, Bowling Green. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I know my brother was stationed in Idaho and New Mexico at one point, and he said the dust storms were horrible. There was one job that I was on in North Dakota where it was a dust storm, but and even though we were, basically sent to go sit in our cars for a little while, I really don't think it was the level of dust storm that it could have been. So my experience on that has been mild. But then again, I've heard there was a game I used to play that somehow I'd found a lot of people in Australia over there, like Perth and Brisbane, and like some of their weather and ooh, ooh, you have to be a different breed to be in Australia. I want to experience it at some point because it's supposed to be really cool, and worth it to at least visit, but definitely would make you a stronger person, that's for sure. Yeah. Um, and I feel like that's why even in the last couple of weeks I had to like almost get myself to hop offline a little bit because I was starting to get sucked into some of the stuff that I'm like, but do I need to? I can only watch so many of the commentary of what's going on. Okay, that makes sense then. Crochet trip to Oz. That'd be an expensive trip. Oh, so actually, oh, I believe that. Speaking of trips, so I know I was gonna not buy any more yarn. And I had that little asterisk of souvenir yarn doesn't count because it's like souvenir budget. And so I 100% meant to look up the name of the shop that I stopped at in DC this last time around. It was on Connecticut Avenue. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. Looped Yarn Works. That's where it was. Um, I just put in the address into the map so many times. I think that that's why it was on my mind. So I tried to be good. Um, it's interesting. I never really set a notions budget for myself, and I think it's because I generally don't buy notions, and I also generally don't use point protectors. Except, look how cute these are. Do you think I could leave those there? And they had a bunch of really cute ones and some very sweary, fun ones as well. But these were the last of this particular pair, so I had to get them, obviously, and it was like the first day of fall or something, so obviously had to get those. And then there were only 2 skeins left of these, so I had to adopt both of them. And now I kinda wanna make a top out of this. I think the upshot is because it's Malabrigo, if I can find more of this nearby, that even if there is a bit of a difference in the dye lot, it won't be as noticeable or tragic if I do decide to make a top out of this Pima cotton. What is Verano is the yarn base on Malabrigo. I don't actually have any cotton Malabrigo. Well, I do now because I'm holding them, but I didn't have any before. The point protectors, if you want to go check that out, is right here. There, I was so hard to only pick one pair out of the bowl that they had. It was, yeah, I know. 'Cause you could do this. There's no reason. And the ridiculous part is like I almost never use these, but I will use these because they're just cute. And how would I, instead of using those ones that look like little traffic cones or whatever, of course, that's why I don't use them. They're not that fun. I'm gonna use stuff that it's fun. So I have no idea what I'm gonna make out of this, other than hopefully see if anyone locally carries Verano. I'm gonna Probably my best shot. Do I need to go out? I feel like I'm going out to Lakewood this week, but I don't know if I'll have time to stop at River Colors. But I think Around the Table Yarns might also carry a decent amount of Malabrigo. I thought I saw something like that. Oh, yeah. Well, if I had Tony's budget, that wouldn't even be a question. So let's be honest. Maybe by next year, if my channel is blown up and I'm, you know, in the black, possibly. Please tell me they also have Lizard Spock ones because I would 100% buy those. So, if anyone has not watched The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon has this whole thing about how amongst friends, rock, paper, scissors, the outcome is too predictable. So he added the layer of Lizard and Spock, and then I don't even remember the whole 5 way. Well, it's more than 5 ways, but I just think it's hysterical. Yeah. I mean, maybe if she I think she used to live in Ohio and now she's in Michigan, so maybe if she was in Ohio, that would be easier. So, yeah, maybe. Maybe I'm looking at this from the wrong angle. You might be right. I have to be honest, I don't know what I'm assuming it's supposed to be Bendigo, and it took me a minute to like get myself to say it properly because I was hearing it in my head, but not it wasn't coming out correctly. Um, so enlighten us. I know I think it was one of the new channels I started watching this weekend where they are road tripping from California all the way to Rhinebeck next month, which that is going to be a trip of a lifetime probably for them. Rhinebeck is actually because it's upstate New York, it's a lot farther than what I thought it was going to be, and I think it might actually be slightly closer to go to Maryland Sheep and Wool. And I really thought about trying to sneak that in, and I just couldn't make it work because I thought, well, instead of flying for a conference, what if I drove? And then it was just too much. And honestly, I'm so glad I did not attempt to drive in DC because Cleveland area traffic is bad enough, and that was fun. I feel like I've also heard that that's a thing. I'm far more likely to go on a well, am I more likely to go on a cruise? I feel like I'm more likely to go on a cruise as a general statement because in theory, like everything's kind of like there and then it helps you stop at places instead of me trying to figure out all the little expeditions and things. Um, Certainly an Alaskan cruise is bucket list level. Okay, maybe I have heard of it. Okay. Oh, that's really cool. That is true. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. I hope I don't sound super uneducated by asking this, but July in the southern hemisphere is technically winter, but maybe your winters are nowhere near as harsh as where I'm at, or if you're in the upper portion of Australia, maybe it's kind of like our southern, like Florida, like they don't tend to get a winter. So that's interesting because most of our stuff tends to be spring, some in the summer, and then in the fall again. So, okay, I'll have to check that out. About sheep and wool. Hmm. Interesting. That was the other thing I found fascinating is that I was really not that far from the grounds from Maryland and sheep and wool, and yet finding locally sourced yarns at the yarn shops in that area was difficult, if not impossible. And I know those because they're like older historical buildings, you only have so much space in those yarn shops. So maybe it's just, a choice and we get spoiled in Ohio because there's a number of like alpaca farms that would allow stuff like, you know, open tour days and stuff like that. So I thought that might be fun to try at some point. I was about to do the wrong kind of row there for a minute. This is why ripping out and chatting goes so much, I don't want to say smoother, but a lot less riskier than trying to crochet and talk at the same time. Okay. Okay, so pretty cold in the overnight. That would be um, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Would be the 0 C, which means ballpark. So they're going to be brisk days, but not terrible. So you could, probably sweater it. I used to have kind of certain reference points of various temperatures, but now that I'm not a practicing chemist anymore, I'm more on the administrative side. A lot has fallen out of my head. It's shocking how much I've forgotten and that I have to look up if I want to know things. So, oh, you are fine. It has been about an hour, so I was just kind of letting any last comments come in. That sounds fun. I wonder if that's what they do. Because there's one on the way home that's like right on the edge of Amish country that I really should just stop one of these days. I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I think I was kind of thinking in the 40s too, Fahrenheit. Um, that I think it's two doors down. Like I kind of know them, but I kind of don't. On this side of me, I, of course, two doors down. We do quite a bit. Um, I was almost dying to go out and ask a question, but believe it or not, I am incredibly shy in person, especially if I haven't figured out how to just like non sequitur myself into something. So I really just need to get better at just like stop and ask questions because really probably nobody cares and would probably enjoy it. I don't know what my problem is. So, but anyway, this has been a lovely hour. Let's see if there's any last questions or comments trickling through. I'm kind of surprised I didn't have any unexpected co-stars because they were going for a nap. And then as I was kind of setting up, they were like, well, maybe we want to check out what's going on. And then apparently they're just actually napping. So anyway, this was super fun. Obviously completely unexpected, but I'm so glad that Olga was able to pop in and with her son. So hi, Olga's son. Even if I knew your name, I wouldn't say it on camera because that's who I am as a person. Don't take it personally. Enjoy being a kid and not being online. That's all I'm going to say about that. I will say as much as I was just saying, like, that is one of the nice things about the internet is the connection. Is I'm glad the largest portion of my childhood was not online. I could not even imagine. So anyway, yeah, thanks for joining me. Again, check out all of these wonderful channels. Yarn Doc, I'm started obviously watching you some more. I don't know if I forgot to comment on your last video. You went shopping. Olga. So how my grandmother taught me was I just mirrored her and so she was left-handed, so everything she does is just in exact reverse, and that's fine. It worked totally okay, and you just have to kind of know that. Um, and I was actually talking to my mom recently about I need to figure this out so I can finish that Barbie doll dress, except and of course, I was shocked that my mom suggested, "We'll just rip the yarn out," because I was like, "Well, no, that's kind of loses the purpose of me finishing her last project." so, um, so yeah, I don't think there's anything tragic about everything being backwards, to be honest, backwards. Um, this whole there's one right way and one wrong way. I do know there are lefties that will still crochet in the right to left orientation. So it is possible. There's probably a YouTube video out there if you're willing to dig far enough. And also, thanks also again for catching a live. And that's okay. That is one of the nice things about YouTube is that you can always catch up later if you are so inclined. And it's hard to pick a time that works for everybody. So for the sake of not making a crochet along confusing, I just wanted one set time for every Sunday that we're doing this, but hopefully I will come up with something in the future to mix it up a little bit more and be a little bit more fair because I do pay attention to where my viewers are at and they're everywhere. So yay, I'm glad because I'm like, I feel like we're really not talking about our projects, but this part is just so fun. And, if you let me, we'll just keep talking and talking and talking. And I have loads of like laundry and catching up to do, unfortunately. So, with that, as always, thank you for hanging out with me here in my Northeast Ohio home, working on the Waterlily. Well, in this case, it's more of a leafy version of Olga Poltava's top. You know what? I forgot to switch my QR code from the Facebook group to there is Etsy. So if you need to snag that off of Etsy, I'll give it a second. Holly 15 gets you 15% off, but please, I'm going to go on the support your local artisans. And if you can manage the full price of the pattern, please do so. And I will leave out with the Ravelry version, same code Holly15 if that helps you out, because I have also been there in my life where all I could afford were free or heavily discounted patterns. So no judgment whatsoever. I just say, for myself, if you can swing, a very, I don't know, it's a little bit more than a cup of coffee, but honestly, I've wasted $8 on stuff that didn't work out before. So anyway, well, I appreciate you understanding that, but I'll figure something out. And anyway, I can't wait to visit with you next Sunday. And of course, hopefully later this week, there will be another, I don't want to say real video because this is as real as it gets right here, but there is another video coming out sometime this week and I will see you then. Bye.